Hello, hello, and good morning for folks who are on my time zone, and good afternoon for those who are at the rest of Texas.
Mhm.
My name is Bonnie Perez Ramirez, and I am the Director of Partners Resource Network's PEN project. I will tell you a little bit more about what PRN does for the families here in Texas, and then I'll go ahead and introduce our presenters. Michelle will go ahead and tell you a little bit more about CPG and what they do, and then we'll kick off with this fabulous presentation. Partners Resource Network is the nonprofit agency that operates the Texas statewide network of parent training and information centers that serve parents of children and youth with disabilities. And we cover from ages 0 to 26 years of age. In addition to that, we also work with youth self-advocates ages 14 to 26. All of parent training and information centers are funded by the U.S. Department of Education Office of Special Education Programs. Now in Texas, because we are so big, we do have 4 PTIs, and this project, the PEN project, serves families living in ESC regions 9, 12, and 14 through 19. So that basically means we serve about 122 counties here in Texas. And the majority of PRN staff, we are parents of an individual with a disability. So we really understand a lot of what our families go through. Our mission is to empower and support Texas families and individuals impacted by disabilities or special healthcare needs. All of our services are free and we are here to serve you. And now, Ms. Michelle, go ahead and kick it off with about yourself and
Thank,
CPG.
thank you so much, Bonnie. We are so happy to to host with you today with Partners Resource Network. Today we have Mike Day and Ann Hughes, who are going to be talking about children with special needs and divorce, and what you really need to know specifically here in Texas, because different states have different laws and regulations. We cannot see you or hear you since we are in webinar mode, but we would love to make sure that we get all of your questions answered. So please, if you have a question or comment, put that in the chat box and we'll get to as many of your questions as we possibly can. We are recording this webinar and we will send it out to everybody who has registered. So hopefully you didn't give us a fake email address. If you're listening on our podcast, you can email us contact@cpgcares.net, and we'd be happy to send you a copy of the slides. So again, this is being recorded. You will get a copy of the slides and a link to the recording. I think that's everything you need to know. But who is Consolidated Planning Group? Why do we have our hands in this webinar today? We are a financial planning firm that focuses on families who have a special needs loved one. We've been doing financial services and investments, life insurance, things like that for over 30 years. We have over 30 years worth of experience. The owner of our company, they have 2 special needs kids. So they eat, sleep, and breathe this. We're all 4 of us are parents who are the 4 advisors at Consolidated Planning Group. And you heard that right. There are only 4 of us. It's a small, independent, holistic firm located just outside of Houston. We serve families all across Texas and all across the United States. We're members of the Special Needs Planning Academy. And we are also certified as National Social Security Advisors. So we can help you with all of your questions related to Social Security as well. When we're talking about special needs planning, what does that mean exactly? Well, we help people think about their protection plans for their family, a lifetime care plan. What's going to happen once you're gone and somebody else needs to step in and take care of your child? Transition planning, that time when high school is no longer an option and your child is going to move out into the real world. What does that look like and how is that going to work for your family? We help families with ABLE accounts, special needs benefits, other ways that you can save money for your loved one without jeopardizing those benefits. And of course, we're here to educate and advocate for families like yours, because we've been through it and we know how complicated this all is. And we want to make it easier for you. You know, there are over 263,000 financial advisors across the United States, but fewer than 200, period, not 200,000, just 200, focus on special needs planning the way that we do. That's fewer than 0.1% of all the financial advisors in the United States doing special needs planning. So what that tells us is that you are definitely in the right place when you're here with us. We do webinars several times a week, and we hope you've been to some of them in the past. If this is your first one, welcome. Things that we want you to think about related to special needs planning. Developing a future needs care plan will help you not only be able to plan and prepare for the future, it's going to help you sleep a little better at night, knowing what's going to happen and that you have resources in place for when you're no longer here. So we want you to develop your future plans as early as possible. Think about after high school, you know, you're going to need residential options, maybe you're going to need vocational resources, maybe some educational options beyond high school. We can help you find those opportunities. We want you to plan ahead, especially thinking about residential options, because they can often have long wait lists. And we would hate for you to find the perfect spot and then they have a long wait list and you can't get in when you thought you could. We also want people to make careful considerations about who is going to take care of your loved one once you no longer can. A lot of people just say, oh, we'll let Jacob's older sister, Sarah, take care of him when we're not here. Well, maybe Sarah's going to have her own things going on at that time and might feel a little bit resentful about having to take care of her brother. And maybe Jacob, you know, he might see Sarah as stepping across the boundary where mommy used to be. Now it's Sarah, the sibling. And they're not going to have that same sibling relationship. Jacob might feel a little resentful towards his sister as well. So think about if that's really the right fit for you before you just assume that a sibling will step in happily to that role. Okay, so without any further ado, please, everybody, again, thank you so much for being here. We've got Marianne and Mike, and they're going to take over talking about how to deal with divorce and what is different when you are going through divorce with a child who has a disability. All right, Marianne, you are first up.
Thank you, Michelle and Bonnie. It's a pleasure to be here today. I am Mary Ann Hughes. I'm a mom of 2 children, now young adults on the autism spectrum, opposite ends. And my journey led me to become a certified divorce coach. So I'm honored to share my learnings and advice with you today. And I've got my contact information there. If you'd love to follow up, I'd love to reach out and offer a complimentary consultation if you have some issues that you're thinking about either before, during, or after your divorce process. So happy to support you in any way I can.
And I want everybody to know that when you receive these slides later on, all of the links will be clickable for you. Right now in presentation mode, they're not, but once you get them later on today, you can click straight to Marianne's website from that link.
Yeah, so as I mentioned, I went through divorce, and I know when I went through it, I had these feelings, and you're probably having some of these emotions as well. And so I'm here to tell you that you're not alone. We're okay, and we can all get through this together with all the supports that you have here on this webinar today and so many other resources that are out there to help. So you're probably feeling overwhelmed, not knowing where to start, not knowing what the future holds for you or your child, the ones with disabilities and the ones that don't have disabilities. As Michelle mentioned, there's all kinds of issues out there for all kinds of family members and dynamics. and it's not clear how to get the best result for you and for all those in your family, and what relationship in the future will look like with all those around you, whether it's your people in your home or your ex, and then other entities you want to have to deal with. And so I'm here to let you know that there is a path to success. There's a framework, there's different resources you can reach out to help you have a bright future after divorce. Divorce is a finite process. It seems like it goes on forever. Sometimes in some people's cases it does, but it does end one day, and then you want to focus on making your life after that as good as possible. And that does happen. So a bit more about me. So these are my young men. And they were in high school when we went through divorce, because my divorce happened after over 20 years of marriage. Some people get divorced early on within their marriage, and some people, it may come as unexpected as it was with me after a long marriage, and you don't make plans for that, but sometimes those things happen. And so if you're on this call, you're probably already thinking about that. But if you happen to be on this call and don't have divorce in your horizon, I'm not here advocating for divorce. I'm not a proponent of divorce, but sometimes it does happen. Sadly, in families with special needs children, it's as high as 80% are some numbers that we hear. So just know that if you know somebody going through it, you can provide support, provide them resources, that there is hope and you can get through it. And so what happened with me is I had to figure out what was I going to do when I was faced with divorce. I made it my mission in the divorce was to make it about my kids, to get the best result for my kids. And even though you're going through a lot as a mom or a dad, depending on who's listening, but what you don't want to do, which I ended up doing because I didn't know at the time who to go to or what to do in this process, I spent so much time, money, and effort trying to figure out what to do, what not to do, and how to receive the best outcome for my kids. And so, long story short, I did get a great result for my family, but it was a long, hard road getting there. And so with divorce being so common among these families, I decided I want to take my learnings and help others navigate the overwhelm and complexities that are involved in special needs divorce. And so I formed Special Family Transitions. I had worked prior to having kids, but this was something that was a great passion for me to try to help other people. So became a divorce coach and consultant, went through lots of trainings, and through my own experience, as well as through my professional experience, I now help families before, during, and after divorce in any way that they need. I do one-on-one coaching. I have a course I developed that kind of took all my knowledge. I tried to condense it all into 1 hour. So that way, if you're trying to figure out some next steps, it's a great way to go. Also offer a lot of support and information on my social media, and happy to share that with you as well. But the key is there is help, and that's my focus. I'm the only certified divorce coach working exclusively with special needs families, and I'm real proud of that, and trying to get the word out there so that there is help, and that there are things to do and not do, and we'll go over some of those in this presentation. And so I mentioned about my course, and I tried to figure out how can I condense all this knowledge that's taken years to learn and use and help people into a easy to use format and pathway to success. And so I came up with an acronym RISE, and that term meant a lot to me during my divorce. I want to rise above and be my best self in divorce, which helped me a lot to get what I did and to make a good impression among all the teams and people I had to work with. And so I'll take you through each of those. What it takes for success is just one framework. There's lots of other things to do as well, but these are some things to think about as you're going through divorce. And so each letter in that acronym stands for different things. And so you want to kind of recognize what you're going through, get in the right mindset so that you're in a good place to advocate for yourself and for your children. We talk a lot about our children, but we also have to look at ourselves, how we go through this process, and make sure that we're in a good position to make good decisions. And so we're going through a grief cycle. It's not just us, but it's also our kids are going through these kind of emotions and process. And so it's just good to know that these feelings are normal to have. So first you may deal with denial, and then anger, bargaining, depression, and finally acceptance. And some people call this a change management cycle, or any kind of grief or loss. Every time we go through any kind of change, we kind of go through these kind of steps. But it's important to know that we want to get through these, that they exist, and it's okay to feel these emotions. But when we actually make real progress is when we finally get to the acceptance phase to figure out, okay, what do we actually need to do and take action? And so, like anything else, think of it as a project, as a business proposition, whatever mindset you need to get into to make a plan, to get the best outcome, have a goal, and then you want to meet your goals for divorce. And so one way of doing that is kind of knowing what you're dealing with. What do you currently have in terms of your financial assets and financial needs for you and your kids? You want to look at what the future might hold as well, not just the current cost, but in the future, what are you going to need? Because all these things are going to be so important when you talk about the supports you're going to need for your child and what they're going to need in the long term. Some divorces are amicable and some are not. And so the key, though, for either way is hopefully to put the child first at the center. So that way both parties are working for what's best for the child, and how can we take our resources and other resources that are out there, and what do we need so that our children's needs are met now and later.
That's super important. People are often shocked when we do the future care cost analysis for them, and they see how much it will take to, help fund their child's life when they're no longer here. Especially when it's longer, further out there into the future, that those costs just go up like crazy. So we definitely see that a lot, and it's so important to know ahead of time what to save for.
Right, and I can say that's one of the biggest issues, I think, in a divorce with a special needs child is those costs, because they are huge. And so the decisions you make and how you go about it really impacts that. So definitely work with a financial planner to help you out as need be on there. And then you want to take care of yourself. A lot of times, as special needs parents, we focus just on our kids and not on ourselves. But if we're not in a good place to make good decisions, we're not going to do the best for our child. And so take time for self-care to take care of you so that you can be emotionally and mentally prepared to do the best you can in the divorce process and make better decisions. This is in a way kind of your one shot to get it right. Granted, you can always go back later for modifications, but no offense to Mike here, but we want to try to limit the legal involvement as much as possible, try to work things out and think things through during the divorce as much as you can. And so, don't have to do this alone. You definitely reach out to family, friends, professionals, groups such as this to seek the people who've gone through this and support you and kind of some best practices to take during the divorce and afterwards.
Yeah. And Mary Ann, if I could just interject, and absolutely no offense, I fully recognize I'm about the least fun person to spend money on. But with respect to self-care, what I tell all my clients is two things. One is a lot of divorces involve trauma on one level or another. And trauma is something that can be kind of a blinder at times. And you don't even necessarily know that it's happening. And one of the things that I've really started to encounter is that people have certain expectations of the justice system to help them resolve their trauma. And unfortunately, at least in Harris County, the family court systems don't really do a whole lot of that. You're not really going to get any kind of emotional validation. And that doesn't mean that those needs aren't super important and that they're very human and they absolutely need to be met. There's a book, I don't know if you guys can see this, it's called Truth and Repair. It's written by a woman named Judith Herman, who's a professor of psychiatry at Harvard Medical School. And she's kind of the godmother of trauma studies. And she just came out with this new book. And it's about victims of trauma and how they experience the justice system. And, you know, until you've lived it, you can't really fully appreciate what's going on. So it's a book that I, in particular, if there's any kind of betrayal trauma, I have my clients read this book. And for any divorce, some of them don't necessarily involve a lot of trauma and some do, but I always tell people to watch Ted Lasso. People think of it as this really good, feel good show, but the subtext of it is getting through a divorce and ways that you can respond to that adversity in a healthy way or an unhealthy way. And so, yeah, so when it comes to self-care, I just wanted to tell people to educate themselves about trauma and watch Ted Lasso.
Exactly. I mean, divorce is not a fun process. It's very traumatic in a lot of cases, and it's not something you expected and don't know how to react. There's a lot of emotions involved for sure. And so that's why we want to work with people to help you process that. The worst thing you can do is rush through decisions when you're in a very emotional state. So that's why taking your time, working with a coach and other professionals can help you kind of figure out what's really important to you. What is it you want to accomplish, and where do you see your life going, and what do you want after divorce? Because all of those things will definitely come into play as you make decisions and make plans for your family as part of the divorce and afterwards. And so, as been mentioned, there's very few professionals who really understand what special needs families go through financially, legally, and so on. And so when you try to find someone to help you, make sure they have experience in that area. There's a lot of lawyers who don't understand what it takes to be successful in a special needs divorce, what you need to include, what to look out for, as well as the financial coaching and even the mental health professionals that are out there. They may not fully appreciate some of the challenges that we go through day to day. Burnout is real. There's a huge depression and so on among families taking care of kids needing care around the clock. And there's a lot involved in that. And so, yeah, make sure that you find the right people and have it connect you with resources that can support you now and later as well. And so, a big part of this too, a lot of the reason probably you're here today is to understand what it takes in a special needs divorce that makes it unique. And Mike will go over a lot of these in more detail. But as we talked about, you want to definitely look at what's going on now and in the future in terms of their needs and their costs and their care and others people in your village that you pay and need help to support them. You want to look at how are you going to fund those needs then, right? Is it through child support? Is it going to be through how you split your estate? Is it going to be maybe getting some kind of spousal support or alimony? Some people may know it as. Is it through life insurance and government programs? In a lot of cases, it's a combination of all these things. So it's important to think of each of these aspects as you're making your plan and in your agreements and your discussions. It's important to note as well that child support, especially in Texas, and like I said, Michael will go over this in a lot more detail, it can be above guideline. It can be above 18. A lot of people think child support has to end at 18, and that's not the case for a child with disabilities and an adult with disabilities as well. So there'll be more discussion on that. And then there's different things you've got to have in place as well to protect your child and adult as they get older if they're receiving benefits or will receive them in the future, because we don't want those things to not be there for them as an unintended consequence of maybe something not being done correctly as part of the divorce decree or other agreements that you might have in terms of when money needs to go. And then think about things but guardianship or other alternatives to that as part of the divorce. Maybe start planning for who's going to pay for that, how that will look, if you're going to be co-guardians perhaps, and look at maybe things like school and IEPs, who's going to be decision maker. All those kind of things are definitely things that need to be thought about in the process. And then my last E is about how you express yourself during divorce. It's really important to come across in a confident, professional manner to not just your legal team, but also to your soon-to-be ex-spouse, or if you're already divorced, to your co-parent. A lot of times there's a lot of conflict, and a lot of that sometimes isn't necessary, and a lot of that is based on how people are coming across to each other. But coming across as credible as you can, as professional as you can, is going to help you and your child get what's best for both of you, for everybody involved. And then you want to execute. This can be overwhelming and there's so many different things to take, but just break it down into chunks, have an action plan, and just do one step at a time, and other people can help you there to get through that process as well. And you know, I'm an example. This is the start of something wonderful, right? You may not think of a divorce as a positive thing, but having gone through it and then looking past that, there's so many more opportunities available to you. So take the experience, even though it may seem like the worst experience of your life right now, but know that beyond that, you can make it a very positive, good experience post divorce, even during the divorce, for you and for your children. So think of it as a beginning and not just an end. And so, yeah, there's also ways to reach me. I'm Special Family Transitions everywhere on social media. I share resources, videos, all kinds of tips. I've recently been published in Autism Spectrum News with an article about identifying reasons and how to get through conflict in special needs divorce. I'm going to be on a summit, a couple of different summits and events. One is the Autism Parenting Summit put on by Autism Parenting Magazine, and there's a brand new first time to having a World Autism Summit put on by Autism Today. So definitely check out my Facebook page, Special Family Transitions, to make sure that you're aware of all the events. I try to post in different groups around the Houston area, but sometimes it doesn't always go through, or people would not see those. So definitely reach out and I can keep you apprised of some events going on. And so I also do have a private Facebook group for people who are going through it and want more private type of approach, as opposed to sharing with everybody on Facebook. So please feel free to reach out to me in any of those ways. Happy to help. One thing I do want to share as well is that I have a YouTube channel, and on there I have some really helpful videos on helping your kids and yourself through the process. One thing I don't think I mentioned in this presentation is how to help your kids through the process. And there's something called a social story that you can help kids transition from where they are now to kind of what to expect as part of the divorce and going to the other parent's house. So please look up that video. I think it's got some helpful information. I can help you create one of those as well.
Thank you so much, Mary Ann. All right, Mike, it is your turn.
Okay, thank you very much, Michelle. My name's Mike Day. I'm a board certified family law attorney. Less than 1% of the lawyers licensed by the State Bar of Texas are licensed or certified in family law by the Texas Board of Legal Specialization. My primary practice area is in Houston. I practice with some lawyers named Jeff Diamond and Kelsey Yalbrith. We have an emphasis on a high net worth divorce and high conflict custody situations. I've done a lot of those sorts of cases involving children with special needs. And as we go through the slides, you'll see that when you have a divorce or some sort of other family law matter involving a child with special needs, they're different. And there are some nuances that a lot of folks, when I say folks, I mean other lawyers, don't necessarily appreciate. So if anything that you get from this presentation is that these are the sorts of questions that I would need to ask a lawyer if I'm interviewing lawyers to see if I want them to represent me. So think of this as that type of outline. So how does a child's disability impact a divorce? Well, a lot of times there's a default to a 50-50 split in the property division. That's the assets and liabilities that are community property. That can change, and you'll have, and generally speaking, you could get an easier time advocating for a larger percentage of the award in the favor of the parent who's the primary caregiver of the child with special needs. It also impacts the amount of child support. Normally you have these things called literally the guidelines, and the guidelines are a percentage. It starts off with one child, 20% of effectively your post-tax earnings or the child support obligors. post tax earnings or net after tax. And you can go above those percentages. You know, for 2 kids, it's 25%. For 3 kids, it's 30. For 4 kids, it's 35. I think it caps out at 6% or 6 kids. But you can go above those guidelines if you can prove that the children's needs require it. Okay, and that's very important. It's not about lifestyle, it's about their needs. Also, sometimes if you have a child with special needs, that impacts what happens in terms of possession and access. So a lot of times in Texas, people will default to what's called the expanded standard possession order, or the standard possession order with elections, which means, you know, for the non-primary parent, they get first, third, and fifth weekends starting Thursday after school and ending on Monday mornings when school starts again. But you have some ability to deviate from that if the needs of the child require it. Also, one of the most complicated things about divorce involving children with special needs is that there's an interplay there between divorce and guardianship and what happens after the child turns 18. And not all of it is very settled in the law. She's no longer on the Texas Supreme Court, but Justice Eva Guzman wrote a very interesting opinion a few years ago where a child who had been previously adjudicated as an adult disabled child started college, and father said, you know what, I don't want to have to pay child support. I want to retire. My kid's in college. He's not disabled. And so they had a trial about it. The father lost. It went up on appeal. The appellate court affirmed the trial court, saying, no, the child's still disabled, notwithstanding the fact that he goes to college. And then the father just, you know, he couldn't help himself and appealed it all the way to the Texas Supreme Court. And the Texas Supreme Court didn't take the case, but Justice Guzman offered a sort of an opinion of sorts, saying, well, one of these days, the Texas Supreme Court should really take up this statute because it's kind of a mess. And courts really don't know what it means. And we need to provide some guidance to the trial courts. Well, that guidance hasn't happened yet, but you just need to be mindful when you're going through this process that, yeah, these are good questions to ask a potential lawyer, but if the lawyer says this is unclear, this is unsettled, I mean, there's some truth to that. The last 2 issues, and arguably some of the most important issues, is that Texas is not California or New York. We don't really have alimony. We have this thing called spousal maintenance, which is a little bit different. But one of the really interesting things about the spousal maintenance statute is that if you are taking care of an adult disabled child, and that is a specific term as defined by the Texas Family Code, and we'll get to that definition here in just a little bit. But if you are taking care of an adult disabled child, you could be eligible for spousal maintenance. And here's a very important question to ask lawyers is, what do they think the estate cutoff is for spousal maintenance? Because if you have a lawyer, in particular a lawyer in Houston, who tells you, well, you know, if you're going to get $200,000 in the divorce settlement, I don't think you're going to qualify. Continue to interview other lawyers, because there are some cases that have said that you can get as much. I mean, there's a East Texas case that came out last year that said you could get as much as $750,000 in a divorce settlement and still be eligible for spousal maintenance. Okay, so don't think, well, I'm getting $200,000-$300,000, I immediately don't qualify. Just know that there are some cases that do not support that position, and that I would say a lot of lawyers, even a lot of board certified lawyers, don't really know about those cases. And lastly, and this is arguably the most important thing, is that if a child is going to be adjudicated as an adult disabled child, and if there's going to be child support paid after the child turns 18 and graduates from high school, and you want to preserve that child's eligibility for governmental benefits, you need to have the money go into a Medicaid payback trust. This is essential. And your divorce lawyer is not who needs to be drafting this trust. In fact, what I would say is that you need to get a really good estate planning lawyer who has specialized experience in drafting special needs trusts, because that is almost its own subspecialty. And then you work backwards from that, because you'll have different provisions in the trust. Not necessarily everything needs to be paid back to Medicaid. Child support's the most important thing that needs to be paid back to Medicaid. So there could be additional trusts. Sometimes parents are in a high conflict situation, and I've seen this before where, I don't mean to cast aspersions on my gender, but it does tend to be fathers, and they pay the child support. And they're like, you know what? Not only if I have to pay child support after this kid gets older, I don't like the way you spend your money, mom. So I want to be the trustee of the trust. And then there's a dispute about who gets to be the trustee. And that's also very important, because a lot of times it does become sort of a power struggle. And a lot of lawyers, quite frankly, they haven't had to actually litigate something like that before. But it's important that you get an estate planning attorney who knows what they're doing. And in some respects, they're kind of the quarterback. Okay, so let's talk about what is an adult disabled child. And the family code in Texas has a very specific definition. And this definition is up here. And basically what it stands for is that your child can't take care of themselves, and they're not capable of self-support, and that everybody knew this, or they knew about the cause of the disability before your child turned 18. Okay. And so that if you can meet this statutory definition, then your child can be adjudicated an adult disabled child. Now, sometimes people don't want to avail themselves of that. Maybe their divorce is high conflict enough. They think they can get it through Social Security another way. I don't do governmental benefits. I would be leery of any family law attorney that tells you what to do to qualify for Medicaid. That's the thing about these special needs cases, is that you have a lot of subspecialties and people need to stay in their lane. And a red flag is if someone's like, I can wear all these hats. Oh yeah, I did this once for my buddy, 10 years ago. That's a red flag, folks. If we could go to the next slide, please, Michelle. So sometimes it's premature to know whether or not the child is actually an adult disabled child. But you can still, classic example, child's very young, they're on the spectrum maybe, but it remains to be seen what's going to happen, right? Like maybe there's going to be some very intensive ABA therapy that can really help. That would give the child the opportunity to be self-supporting, and people don't really know. Well, what do you do in that situation? Well, it may not be ripe to decide whether or not the child is disabled for purposes of the Texas Family Code. However, you can still argue that the child has certain needs, and therefore you want above guideline child support, or you want certain property to get set aside for the child. You still have the ability to do that. And quite frankly, 154 is the chapter in the Texas Family Code that addresses child support. And there are all kinds of obscure provisions in there that people don't really avail themselves of. And you can get a lump sum payment. You can get property that gets set aside. You could potentially get a homestead set aside. I was involved in a case years ago where these folks had a house that they acquired in the Heights back in the 80s. Well, guess what? That house is worth a lot more money now. And one person was like, you know what? I want to sell this house. And the other person was like, what do I do? Like, this is the only home the child has ever known. I need to stay in this house. It would be so detrimental to me financially to have to find new housing. And so we were able to argue for a set aside. And so that was set aside for the purposes of supporting the child. And there are some very old Texas Supreme Court cases that have not been overturned that still say that you can set aside the other spouse's separate property, right? Which is not something you can get to support yourself. But if you have a child that needs support, then that's potentially something that you could avail yourself to. Michelle, if we could go to the next slide, please. So how is the amount of child support determined? Okay. You know, there's some cases that talk about this, but just know that you have the adult disabled child provisions, right? But they tie back to the provisions that are utilized for all children in the state of Texas. Okay. So you're looking at all of 154. And in a nutshell, you're looking at the child's needs. What, if any, changes going into effect September 1st will impact us? Man, that's kind of there's a lot of changes that could potentially impact people.
We might need to have you for a whole webinar about changes once they.
Right. Because there are some changes, for sure. And not just with respect to this area, but just in divorce in general. There are a lot of changes. I mean, probably the biggest changes involve if there's any family violence. So if anyone's been abused, whether it be the parent or the child, it used to be you had to show that family violence had occurred and is likely to occur in the future. Well, now you don't even have to prove that second prong. And that's a huge game changer for folks because, you know, because it's you have the most historically what was the most difficult part of the case to prove. You don't have to prove that anymore after September 1st. And so that's a real game changer for victims of family violence. And if there are it's not in the slides, and I'll just speak to this very briefly. If you do have a history of family violence in your marriage or in your parenting relationship with the other parent, there are a host of collateral consequences that can arise from that. And that's kind of beyond the scope of today's presentation. But if you're looking for a lawyer, one of the things you might ask is, what do you mean when you're talking to this lawyer is, what do you think are some of the consequences if we bring up this family violence, right? And sometimes you may not want to bring up the family violence. Maybe the other person might lose their job, right? If they, and that's your only means of support. And that's just, those are hard decisions, right? And that's why I encourage everybody to sort of educate themselves about trauma, because one of the things that you absolutely have to do is put yourself in the position to make the best decisions possible. Cortisol brain is for real, and a lot of times you're going to get one shot at a lot of this stuff. As Mary Ann said, you can come back sometimes and tweak things, but just be careful. No, don't think that is automatically true. Because it is a case-by-case situation. And quite frankly, it's a very nuanced question. Okay, well, Karen, that's an excellent suggestion for a webinar. And yeah, I'll take that up with the powers that be. That decision's above my pay grade, but I appreciate the recommendation for a topic. Michelle, if we could go to the next slide, please. So again, financial resources, the needs of the child. And the one thing that really distinguishes cases involving children with special needs and other cases that do not, is that you can expressly take into account the future needs of the child. And that goes back, I think Mary Ann and Michelle both touched upon this, the life care plan, right? And, you know, push comes to shove, arguably a parent could put together their own life care plan, but I think the best practice, especially if the case is going to go to trial or it's one of those cases that will settle on the eve of trial, is that you get an expert who is knowledgeable about putting together a care plan to explain what the future costs look like. In particular, if residential facilities are involved, that's extremely important. That's extremely important. And going back to, you know, and Mary Ann touched upon this, putting together a team. I think a divorce coach is an underutilized tool. I will, you know, one of the things you might want to ask a prospective lawyer is, what do you think about using a divorce coach? And then this follow-up question is, how do I make sure that attorney-client privilege is protected in that situation? Because there are ways to do it, but not all lawyers know that. And that's kind of inside baseball, but I've been involved in cases where folks have tried to find the person who is helping the one of the parents, and they try to say, well, I want that parent's lawyer's file. I'm entitled to it because attorney-client privilege was waived. And there are ways, it's not foolproof by any means, but there are ways to mitigate against that risk. But again, you know, you get somebody who is able to put together a care plan, who can tell you what the cost of that care plan is going to be, and you get a special needs estate planning lawyer to draft a trust agreement that can be presented to the court. If we could go to the next slide, please, Michelle.
I can add real quick, Mike, appreciate you suggesting reaching out to divorce coaches. I think a lot of attorneys may not know about divorce coaches or the role they can play. So for instance, in my case, I don't come across as a testifying expert. So hopefully you avoid some of those situations and Mike help me in terms of making sure that myself and my clients are protected if somebody tries to raise issue with the support I provide. So I try not to take notes because then they can't share those notes, right? But also I'm there to help kind of guide you, help you in terms of ways of thinking, kind of thinking through getting ready for lawyer meetings so that you're spending less on lawyer bills, right? So definitely, I mean, I definitely recommend getting the best lawyer you can that's experienced in special needs, but all the other things that come into play, getting ready for meetings, kind of thinking through things so that you can go in and make the best use of your time with that lawyer. I think that's a big area that I like to able to help my clients with as well.
Yeah, no, I think it's very important. And Mary Ann, you're absolutely correct. It's an underutilized tool. Absolutely. And I think it's important that, you know, you need people to help you process things, right? And so your lawyer can help you process, but that often enough is not the most cost-effective solution. And you want to be able to be in a place where emotionally you can make your best decisions. And what I tell people a lot of times is litigation therapy is the least effective therapy I know. Like if your best day in life is always going to be better than your best day in court. That being said, sometimes you don't have a choice, right? In particular, if the other parent is a narcissist or has other sort of similar type tendencies, you know, entitlement, maybe they're just really selfish, right? Because they're done. You know, the child with special needs is going to be the other parent's problem. They just want to move on with their lives. And, you know, that's really hard, right? Because there's a trauma associated with that, separate and apart from the nuts and bolts of what you got to do, right? And so the divorce coaches can be very, very helpful in helping you be the best litigant you can be, to be quite honest, right? Because that's the other problem, trauma. And I feel like at least in Houston, the judges are, with each passing day, are becoming more and more aware of trauma, but it's just it's a very counterintuitive thing. It's like, for example, one of the things two things I would say. One, sometimes people's affects are changed, right? They come across as really flat or something along those lines. Well, I mean, A, that is evidence of trauma or potentially evidence of trauma, but B, sometimes, just in particular to a layperson, it may make you be less credible, right? And then the second thing, and this is also something to think about, it's outside the scope of the slides, but it is interesting, is that, you know, you may be talking to a therapist and the therapist is like, we need to do some EMDR, and just tell your lawyer, because some therapists will not do EMDR when their patient is in the litigation process because of the way it impacts the memory and impacts recall and makes them potentially a less credible witness, because there are certain, you know, lawyers will try to, you know, play lawyer ball and try to cross-examine you on really sort of minute issues to try to make you look less credible, right? And it's not like what happened didn't happen, but the way that you present your recall of it could potentially change. And that's just something that a real world issue that I've encountered in some of my cases. And lastly, because I don't want to, we got about 10 minutes left. Possession and access to an adult disabled child. This is a huge difference. So child support, if you, for most cases, child support will end when the child turns 18 and graduates from high school. Possession and access jurisdiction, who gets what weekends and that sort of thing, ends when the child turns 18. So a lot of times, you know, once the child ages out, their senior year of high school, you know, people won't have these power struggles over, you know, are you obstructing my time with our child and that sort of thing. That being said, there is a way to go to family courts in Texas saying, I want possession and access of an adult disabled child after the child turns 18. And yeah, and so to Jana's comment, you know, if there's a child that needs EMDR potentially, and it's not covered by insurance, and I think this is in another slide, and I'm probably driving Michelle a little bit crazy by
Should I go? Should I not go?
Yeah, right. I'm sorry. But one of the things that you're looking at is whether or not to use in-network providers. And a lot of times people will default to something called the Family Law Practice Manual. Okay. And that is sort of the Bible on how family law attorneys are supposed to draft divorce decrees and other family law judgments, because Texas is kind of unique in America. We have the longest, most complicated family court judgments probably in all of America, more complicated and longer than maybe even California. Our divorce decrees are typically longer than 40 pages. That is not the case in most of America, okay? And so because these things are so complicated, a lot of times people will go to mediation. And this is another note for you to take down if you're interviewing lawyers, is to say, what sort of issues do we need to be mindful of in terms of in terms of not being pigeonholed with the Family Law Practice Manual? Because what the Family Law Practice Manual does is that it obligates people to use in-network providers. Well, there are two big problems with that. The first is that you'll have certain specialists that aren't necessarily in-network providers or preferred providers, okay? And so if you're court ordered to use a preferred provider, an in-network provider, and then you don't do it, right? And you don't get the agreement from the other parent on the front end, there's a very good chance that you will be held responsible 100% for those costs, and the other parent doesn't have to pay for it. And then the second consideration is that, you know, you don't want to pigeonhole yourself in terms of what is considered a reimbursable expense. A lot of folks believe that certain issues are related to diet, okay? And they think that, and I'm not going to wade into that debate here, because again, that's beyond the scope of this presentation, but just know that it's a potential issue, right? And so if you're wanting the other parent to chip in some money to help defray the cost of that special diet, right? You know, you just need to be mindful of that when this agreement is being drafted, okay? And lastly, or just about lastly, spousal maintenance, right? We talked about how Texas isn't California or New York. It's not an alimony state. You have this thing called spousal maintenance. Again, spousal maintenance is not about lifestyle, just like child support's not about lifestyle. It is about needs. And for spousal maintenance, it's about the minimum reasonable needs, okay? And that, you know, that's a squishy term, right? It's a little squishy, okay? But just know that that's something to be on your checklist when you're interviewing lawyers. Okay, I see another comment from Jana. Yeah, you know, I mean, it's just this is a very tough process, and there are a lot of nuances, and it's not always on people's radar. And sometimes people just don't want to fight about it, right? I mean, sometimes I've had clients that say, you know what, Mike, I know, I hear you. But I'm ready to be done. And that's the other thing too. For the most part, you know, sometimes lawyers are obstructions to settlement. And it's really your case. And so you just need to be mindful of that, within certain framework, you're the one who needs to be making the big picture decisions. Yeah, having expert reports can help dispute over whether or not disability exists. Because sometimes people, you'll have a child that's on the spectrum, and one parent, typically the person who would be on the hook for the child support, doesn't want to pay it, right? Because they've already kind of had in their own mind, this is what my post-divorce beginning is going to look like. It's going to be fun, right? It's going to be Disneyland for me. Well, I mean, not only is that really unfortunate and selfish, but you might be in a situation as the parent on the other side of that, on the receiving end of that, where you're going to have an expert that's willing to testify in trial. Now, going back to, someone asked about September 1st changes. So, and I had this happen. It was not a case involving special needs. It was a different case, but I had a 6-day arbitration earlier this year. And it was a situation fraught with trauma, but one of the things that came up was a very interesting provision of the family code that a lot of lawyers don't know about, called 104008. And it governs when an expert can offer testimony and that expert has not completed a child custody evaluation. Okay. And so what had happened was, in January, the Dallas Court of Appeals struck an expert who is arguably one of the most prominent forensic psychologists in America to testify in family court. And they did it because of this technical violation of 104008. And it really kind of changed the landscape, because there had literally been only one other case before this prominent forensic psychologist had been excluded. Okay. I mean, really, this is a statute that was just not on people's radars. And actually, I had one of the best arbitrators in the state, and he ruled a certain way, and we had to file a motion to reconsider, and we changed his mind. But you get that award to you Sunday night before trial starts. It's like, all right, finally, but the scope of the case really changed. But now that has been changed, because the legislature doesn't want to have to make people go out and have to get a forensic child custody evaluation for just about any issue that might come up in a contested family law matter. And so that's an important change. And, when you're talking to family law attorneys, I mean, they're gonna want to know who you talk to if you're asking very specific questions about 104008. But if you have a case that involves mental health experts in particular of any stripe, it's a very important inquiry.
Mike, they want to know where they can read about the changes that are coming up on September 1st.
Well, there are papers that have been circulated called the Legislative Update, and all of those papers, like I know in the first week of September or so, there's going to be a presentation by Judge Warney and Warren Cole, who are absolutely fabulous resources. I know, but the Houston Bar Association is explicitly closed to non-attorneys. But I mean, you could Google changes, and some lawyer out there is going to put it on their blog. That's probably the best way. But I will tell you that if you want specific questions answered, it's like, I don't perform surgery on myself. I go to my surgeon, right? Like I mean, it's good to do this research, but you're going to need to consult with a lawyer and just ask them specifically what has changed, effective September 1. How do those changes impact my case? Because depending upon the case, it's a very case specific inquiry, factually specific inquiry. And I think I've gone over the time, and I think I covered most of the slides, although look, how about that?
Look, you're on your last slide anyway.
How about that?
Perfect.
How about that?
Let me just say, the last couple of slides are back to being about Consolidated Planning Group, but I would much rather just let you guys keep talking, because you are the reason that people are here today. So once you get these slides later on, if you want to look at, some of the other kinds of topics that we help people with, This link will take you right to our upcoming webinars, a little bit about our team. And then this one, you can schedule your own free consultation with us. We are the financial aspect. We're the money side. Mary Ann and Mike cover the legal paperwork, divorce side. But if you want to make an appointment with us, please do so. We will reach out to you. Please be kind. We're going to reach out and just see if you have all of your questions answered, or if you did want to go ahead and schedule this free consultation where we can learn a little bit more about you and your family, answer your questions, and tell you how we work. So I'll leave this up. Mike, if you want to answer this last question, what are the ranges of incremental child support that are typically seen?
So if you were to Google Texas Child Support Guidelines, it'll show up for folks that are only supporting one group of children. It's like 20, 25, 30, 35%. There is a modest step down. So like, for example, it goes from 20% to 17.5% if you have a child from like a previous relationship, and you have to be, generally speaking, you have to be court ordered to support that child. Sometimes there isn't a court order, but the other, the parents are getting along and they're like, yeah, that's fine. I know you're supporting that other child. I'll agree to the 17.5, for example. But that's, and the Attorney General also has a child support calculator. The guidelines only go up to $9,200 a month after taxes. That's what you're called net resources. You can go above that if you need to, though. If you can go above the percentage. Yeah. And thank you so much to Bonnie. It's been a real honor to speak. I love speaking at these webinars. I mean, I feel like it's such a great resource for the community at large.
Absolutely. Thank you both, Mike and Mary Ann and Bonnie, all three of you, for letting us share our audience with you and sharing your audience with us. These slides will be in your email and a link to the webinar. If you have further questions, unfortunately, we're out of time, but you can certainly reach out to Mike or Mary Ann or me for those questions. Our contact info will all be in the email that you'll receive later on today. And again, one more time, if you're on our podcast and listening instead of watching, and you want a copy of the slides, just email us, contact@cpgcares.net. Thank you again, everybody, so much for taking the time to be here with us today. We hope that we hear from you again soon.
Have a
Bye,
great day.
everybody.
Thank you.